Hey everybody, hope you are doing well. So most of you know who, if you follow me on this channel, and if you don't, please subscribe and click the bell to turn on all notifications. Also, don't forget to hit a like on this button if you like what you see in a little bit. But for many of you that know, I do prophecy conferences and stuff like that. I have one coming up at the end of the month where I'm going to be giving two presentations. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to prophecywatchers.com. But what I like to do is when I have a rough draft of a presentation, a lot of times we'll rehearse them and stuff. I'll rehearse it to make sure the time is right. But years and years ago, I started filming the rehearsal, the rough drafts, because I find that it helps. It helps for me to put that online and see what people think and get your reactions and your feedback, because then I can go back, revise, and make a final edit that's even better than I would have come up with on my own. So I'm going to do that today, and I would love for you to leave in the comments and let me know what you think. So this one is about quantum computing and the multiverse deception. Talked about it quite a bit on this channel, but let's just jump right into it. So the introduction, for those not familiar, my name is Josh Peck, and I work with Prophecy Watchers full time. I've written several books and directed 3 documentary films. My websites are prophecywatchers.com and dailyrenegade.com. My email address is joshpeckdisclosure@gmail.com. And if you're interested in this topic, you should check out my new books. I have a new 2-book set called The Final Cataclysm: Supernatural Signs of the End Times. It's 2 volumes, volume 1 and volume 2. As of right now, as of the time of this recording, they're not available yet. They should be very, very soon, possibly even later today, hopefully by the weekend. And I'll keep everybody updated about that. Okay, so there's a topic that keeps showing up in the news today, quantum computing and the idea of multiple universes, or what scientists call the multiverse. And you might be wondering, well, what does that have to do with my faith? Well, let's dive in together and see how these scientific claims intersect with our biblical beliefs. So let's first start off with what is quantum computing. Well, regular computers work with bits, which are like tiny switches that can either be on, which would be 1, or off, which is 0. So it's like a binary type system. Quantum computing is sort of like giving those switches superpowers. So instead of bits, quantum computers use something called qubits. So qubits don't just have to be on or off, they can be both at the same time. And this is because of something that's called superposition. So imagine if you flip a coin, and until you look at it, it could be heads, tails, or even both. And because of this, a qubit can represent much more information than a traditional bit. Qubits can also entangle with each other. And we will get into a little later what this has to do prophetically, because there's some prophetic stuff that, especially in recent news with something called Q Day and some other stuff that we'll talk about that's really interesting. But qubits can also entangle with each other. So entanglement is a weird quantum phenomenon where 2 particles become linked so that whatever happens to one immediately affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. And this means that quantum computers can do calculations in ways we can't even imagine with regular computers. They can solve problems by exploring all possible solutions at once, not one after the other. So an example that I usually give is in my house, when you first walk into my front door on the right side, there's 3 light switches. And I always mix up what they do, because one turns on the porch light, one turns on the living room light, and the other one does nothing. It's just not connected to anything. So what I usually, a classical computer, the way a classical computer would work is that a classical computer would try each switch one at a time until it finds the right one that it's looking for. What I do is more like what a quantum computer does. I just turn them all on at the same time, and there we go. The only difference there is when I do that, I still don't know which switch corresponds to which light. A quantum computer would know just by turning it on. It would know which one does what thing. So the quantum computer can check all possible solutions at once instead of having to go one at a time. So quantum computers use quantum bits to perform operations, and these operations are based on the principles of quantum mechanics, which is the science of very small particles, even smaller than atoms, like quarks and photons. Now, instead of using simple logic gates like in classical computers, quantum computers use quantum gates. And these gates manipulate the state of the qubit, allowing the computer to perform complex calculations. But here's the catch. Quantum states are very, very fragile. They can collapse if you measure them or if there's even a tiny bit of interference. And this is why quantum computers typically need to be kept super cold, close to absolute zero, to minimize any noise or disturbance. And because we can't see these quantum states with our eyes, we need sophisticated methods to control and read them. While quantum computing is incredibly powerful in theory, making it work in the real world involves overcoming these significant technical hurdles. At least that's how it used to be. And we'll get more into that later because I cannot believe how fast this has exploded. These things are going to be mass produced very, very soon, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So, in layman's terms, quantum computing is like playing chess on a board where pieces can be in multiple positions at once, and moving one piece can instantly affect another piece far away. And it's not just about speed, it's about a whole new way of thinking about computation, one that could change everything about how we compute data today. It is complex, and we're just at the beginning of this quantum journey. So let's talk about some quantum computing breakthroughs. So Microsoft has rolled out something called the Majorana 1 processor. And this is a big deal because it's a new kind of quantum chip that could speed up the arrival of mass-produced, super powerful computers. They're using tiny particles called Majorana particles, which are kind of like opposites of each other. You can imagine twins that cancel each other out if they were to ever meet. Microsoft gets a bunch of electrons, which are those little charged bits inside atoms, to act together like one big particle. And this teamwork makes the qubits more stable and easier to scale up. Scaling up just means making more of them work together smoothly. And Microsoft says one of these chips could eventually outdo every computer in the world combined. And it's really interesting because I remember probably around a decade ago, I was writing about the possibility of these Majorana particles and what they mean, what they could be used for. And for any of you that have been following me that long, you might remember that I did I believe I had a blog post on it, and I think I did a video too. But I was talking about it that long ago, and I didn't know how long it would be before this would be utilized, but here we are. That was about 10 years ago. And here we are. So if any of you have been following me that long from way back then you might remember that. But this is an amazing breakthrough because I thought, because quantum states are so fragile, I didn't really think that there was, like, how do you improve that? And because supercomputers have to be kept, usually underground in really, really cold conditions, I just never thought that this would be able to be mass produced. But with this Majorana 1 processor, that is actually something that can happen now. And it's just weird to see that we, in such a short amount of time, have now gotten to the point where these things very shortly can be mass produced. It's insane. Japan just flipped the switch on something called RIMI, which they're calling the world's first hybrid quantum computer. So they've taken a 20 qubit quantum machine built by a company called Quantinuum and hooked it up to Fugaku, which is a supercomputer already ranked 6th fastest globally. This hybrid setup uses Quantinuum's special trapped ion design, where tiny charged particles are held in place to act as qubits. So combining that with Fugaku's raw speed means they can tackle problems like in physics or chemistry that regular supercomputers would grind over for ages. Intel is now working on its own quantum project, aiming to make quantum computers that can actually be mass produced. They're using silicon, which is the same stuff in your phone's chips, to build what they call silicon spin qubits. These are smaller and packed tighter than other types. Intel's focusing on three big goals. One, they want to test tons of these qubits at once, making sure they work the same every time, which is reproducibility, and cramming more into a tiny space, which is cubic density. And then, of course, the third one, which is mentioned that they want to test all these at once. This could lead to what they call fault-tolerant quantum computers, and these are ones that don't mess up so easily. Then there's IBM, and the reason I'm going through this is to show you that all these different companies are going about solving the same problem in different ways. So there's multiple ways to solve this same problem, which again, I didn't know that because I thought the fragility of quantum states was too big of a problem to even find one solution, let alone multiple solutions to where this could actually be mass produced. So it's just mind blowing. But IBM rolled out something called IBM Quantum System 2. And this is not just one machine. It's a modular setup, meaning they can keep adding pieces to it to make it bigger and better as technology progresses. So you could think of it like Lego blocks for quantum computing. Their latest chip has 156 qubits, and it's 50 times faster than their last one. Scientists are saying it's finally strong enough to do real practical research, like studying molecules or cracking codes. IBM's been building quantum data centers too, so this isn't just a lab toy, it's heading toward real-world use. For someone who's watching Prophecy, like I imagine most of you are, that speed and scalability might hint at how fast things could change when this technology really takes off. Over at D-Wave Quantum, they just tested their new Advantage 2 processor, which packs over 4,400 qubits. Now, that is an absolute monster compared to Remy's 20. They say it solves problems 25,000 times faster than their older system and gives answers 5 times better for precise tasks. It's shown in tests for things like optimization, which is just finding the best solution fast, artificial intelligence, and even materials science, beating their old setup in 99% of tough logic problems. D-Wave's approach is to use quantum annealing. Now, Quantinuum has a new 56-qubit trapped ion quantum computer. So last year, their H-series hit a huge milestone, 3 nines, meaning their 2-bit qubit operation are 99.9% accurate across the board. So that's really just a fancy way of saying that they've made their qubits extremely reliable, which is key for building quantum computers that don't flop mid-calculation. And that's that fault tolerance thing again. This could open doors for practical uses like in finance or industry where precision matters. Google has been at this for a decade now and just showed off their latest chip called Willow. And their approach is different too, but just as impressive. Willow uses more qubits and has gotten way better at fixing mistakes that happen during calculations. So in quantum computing, errors are a really big headache because qubits are super sensitive, but Google's figured out how to use extra qubits to catch and correct those slip-ups. They're calling it a breakthrough because it makes their quantum systems more reliable. Google says Willow can do a specific math problem in under 5 minutes, where today's fastest supercomputer, like the Frontier in Tennessee, would take 10 septillion years. And that's 10 with 24 zeros after it. Both Microsoft and Google are showing us that quantum computing isn't some far-off dream, it's getting closer fast. Microsoft's betting on stable, scalable qubits with their Majorana trick, while Google's piling on more qubits and cracking the error problem with Willow. But either way, We're talking about machines that could solve stuff that we can't even wrap our heads around yet, like inventing new medicines or decoding the mysteries of the universe, or darker things than that. Even more, those familiar with Google's Willow chip have been claiming that there is a connection between how this chip operates and the idea of a multiverse. So let's talk about the multiverse theory and quantum computing. So the idea of a multiverse in the context of quantum computing is largely based on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. And this interpretation was first proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in the 1950s. And it suggests that all possible alternate histories and futures are real, each representing an actual world or universe. So in simpler terms, every time a quantum event happens with multiple possible outcomes, instead of one outcome being realized, all outcomes occur, but in separate parallel universes. So if you flip a quantum coin, in one universe it lands heads, in another it lands tails. When computing experts like Hartmut Nevin from Google's quantum AI team discuss quantum computing in relation to the multiverse, they're pointing to the behavior of qubits. Now remember, a qubit in superposition can exist in multiple states simultaneously. And when these qubits interact to perform computations, they're exploring all possible solutions at once, which is why quantum computers can solve certain problems exponentially faster than classical computers. Now, the claim here is that this computational ability might actually involve interactions with parallel universes. Nevin and others argue that the extraordinary speed of quantum computers can be explained if we consider that the computations are occurring across multiple universes simultaneously. So essentially, each possible state of a qubit could be thought of as existing in a separate universe where the computation is being carried out. When we see the result, it's like we're observing the outcome from one of these universes where the computation was successful. This interpretation ties into the concept of quantum parallelism, where a quantum computer, due to superposition, can perform a vast number of computations in parallel, or so it seems from our perspective. So again, think of the light switches. I turn all three of them on at the same time. To these experts, the mind-boggling speed and efficiency of quantum computing in handling calculations that would take classical computers almost infinite time suggests that perhaps these computers are not just processing data within our universe. They're suggesting that these calculations are somehow accessing or being influenced by other universes in the multiverse. However, when they say multiverse in this context, they're not talking about physically traveling to or interacting with these other universes in any tangible way. Instead, it's a theoretical framework to explain the phenomena observed in quantum mechanics and computing. So they're proposing that the physical reality of quantum mechanics, as demonstrated by the power of quantum computers, might necessitate a multiverse where every quantum possibility plays out, giving us the computational power that we see. Now, this notion, it's far from universally accepted, even within the scientific community. Critics argue that quantum mechanics can be explained without invoking multiple realities, suggesting that the incredible computational power might just be a property of quantum physics within our one universe. However, because multiverse is a buzzword, whenever scientists get up there, and talk about this, that's the one that the headlines are going to run with. So we've heard about a lot of multiverse ideas in the scientific community. It comes up all the time. It's in popular culture. It's in Marvel movies. It's in a lot of movies. What do we make of this as Christians? Let's look at a biblical perspective on the idea of the multiverse. As Christians, we're taught from the Bible about one creation, one universe under the sovereignty of one God. The many worlds interpretation, suggesting infinite realities, doesn't quite mesh with this. Is it at least possible? Well, sure. Lots of things can be technically possible, but that doesn't mean that they are very likely. So the Bible does talk about heaven and hell as distinct places, but not as parallel universes where every possible version of history unfolds. So our faith teaches us that while there are other spiritual realms, the concept of a multiverse where every decision branches into infinite realities doesn't align with scriptural teachings. So Genesis 1:1 starts with, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now that's suggesting a single purposeful creation. Ephesians 4:6 speaks of one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all, emphasizing unity in creation and governance. So while quantum computing is a marvel, the idea of the multiverse challenges our faith's understanding of a singular divine order. And I'll mention too, a lot of times with this idea of the multiverse, they mention that there would be infinite universes. Well, that right there is where the whole thing should break down, because in mathematics, if any math that represents the physical world, which should be all of it, but uh, infinity can't exist. Actually, it's taught that, like, if you're trying to solve a math problem and your answer is infinity, then you screwed up somewhere. You messed up. You got to go back and fix it. There's a mistake. Yet this idea of infinite realities, infinite universes is constantly being pushed, and it's just not possible. Not with the way that we know how physics works. Now, of course, with God is anything possible? Yes. But with the laws and the boundaries that he has set up in his own creation, infinity of anything cannot be possible. It's never ending. It's without end. It's not even a real number. It's impossible. So there's that. Also, there's the idea that the whole reason the multiverse idea was even embraced by the scientific community is because we as Christians have something called the fine-tuning argument, which basically says everything is finely tuned in our universe so that we can exist and so that everything can run smoothly. Because if you change like the mass of one particle, all of a sudden life can't exist. If you move the moon a little closer or a little further away from Earth, it either crashes in or it flies out into space, and then it really messes everything up. Everything is like so perfectly finely tuned that one little thing goes off and then life can't exist. And there's thousands, there's millions of these. I actually don't know about millions, but there's at least thousands of these parameters. And so when they figure it out, they say that the chances that this all happened by chance are far less than the chances that this was created. Like the chance that this universe was created, that's a far greater chance that God actually exists than all of this happening by accident. So what the multiverse scientists do is say, well, actually, we're just one of many universes. We just happen to be in the one that has life because this one has life. But all of the other universes, the finely tuned thing, none of it works. They're in some other universe, the mass is different, and life doesn't exist in that universe. And so it was used as an argument against fine tuning, but it just doesn't hold up. I mean, it's pretty silly. But in order for that to work, you got to have basically infinite universes, and that right there, again, if your answer is infinity, then you mess something up. So how do we reconcile science and faith? Well, science and faith often seem to walk parallel paths, but they don't have to be at odds. Quantum computing's potential to solve problems can be seen as a tool for human advancement. However, the leap to saying that it proves a multiverse is highly speculative. Just because we can't compute in ways that seem to transcend our understanding doesn't mean that we must accept every scientific hypothesis about reality. Excuse me. Just because we can compute in ways that seem to transcend our understanding doesn't mean that we must accept every scientific hypothesis about reality. So just because quantum computing seems wild and it seems like it would have to utilize something like the multiverse, it doesn't mean that that's true. Just because something's hard to understand doesn't mean that it's basically magic, you know. And that's basically what the idea of the multiverse would have to be. It's on the level of magic. It's just ridiculous. But remember, science often moves from one theory to another as new evidence comes to light. The multiverse is a hypothesis, not a confirmed reality. Our faith, rooted in Scripture, provides us a way to understand the world that doesn't bend with every new scientific theory. Now let's talk about quantum computing and prophecy, which I imagine is what most of you would be interested in hearing about, and there's quite a bit here. Now, how might quantum computing play a role in the prophecies we read about in the Bible? Well, imagine if one country or a leader got their hands on this technology first. They could break any code, they could see into every secret, and control how information spreads across the world. That sounds familiar when you think about it in context of Revelation 13:7, which talks about one power ruling over everything. Now, suddenly, quantum computing doesn't just sound like a tech upgrade. It sounds like a tool for someone to gain the kind of control we're warned about in prophecy. We've been told by Jesus in Luke 21:28 to watch for signs that point to his coming, and quantum computing might just be one of those signs. It's like we're living in times where knowledge is exploding, just like Daniel 12:4 says. With quantum computers, we're not just talking about better video games or faster internet. We're talking about solving mysteries of life, understanding our DNA better, or even using AI in ways we haven't imagined. But with great power comes great potential for misuse. If this tech falls into the wrong hands, we could see a world where privacy vanishes, and control over information could mean control over everything, echoing those end-time prophecies. So what if quantum computing helps set the stage for the Antichrist? With the power to manipulate data on an unprecedented scale, someone could deceive the world like never before. So think about it. Control over information means control over what people think, believe, and fear. This could align with biblical warnings of a figure who deceives the nations. It's a scenario where the technology of quantum computing could either be a force for good or a tool for fulfilling prophecies in ways we're just beginning to grasp. And seeing the state of the world today and how easily people can fall into corruption, I do not see a lot of good that can come from quantum computing in light of the dangers. And that's why we have to stay vigilant, discerning, and rooted in our faith as we see these technologies evolve. Let's talk about the dreaded Q Day. So, and this falls into what might prophetically occur as well. Countries like the United States are getting worried because hackers might be grabbing data right now, just waiting for quantum computers to become strong enough to unlock it. Now, that same crazy speed that lets quantum computers solve tough problems fast could also be turned against us, specifically against cybersecurity. So think about it. The systems keeping our banks, power grids, and other critical stuff safe could be at risk. And today's top encryption, like RSA 2048, which protects a lot of our online secrets, would take a regular computer a billion years to crack, but a working quantum computer could theoretically bust it open in under 2 minutes. That's a scary jump, but it's got people talking about something called Q Day. That Q Day, that's the moment when a big, powerful quantum computer uses a special trick called Shor's algorithm to break through all the major public key systems we rely on. Those are the digital locks based on super hard math problems like factoring huge numbers. And if that happens, a lot of what we trust to stay private could suddenly be wide open. So basically, cryptographers, those are the experts who design the digital locks keeping our online world safe. Cryptographers call Q Day the moment when a quantum computer gets powerful enough to break through the encryption that we rely on every day. So encryption is like a secret code that protects stuff like your bank account, emails, or even government secrets when it's sent over the internet. The systems most at risk are the ones built on math involving huge prime numbers, and those are numbers only divisible by one in themselves, like 2, 3, or 17, but way bigger. The problem is, those are the exact systems holding up almost all our digital communication right now. So when Q-Day hits, it's going to be a big deal, like an earthquake shaking up the tech world. Businesses, especially internet companies and banks, will feel it hard because their secure systems could suddenly be wide open. Governments might struggle to keep their secrets. For regular folks like you and me, it could mean our personal privacy. Think passwords, messages, or online shopping. All of that gets put at risk. It sounds like something out of Revelation describing a world where everything's tracked or exposed. Now, because of this, leaders in politics and tech are starting to wake up to the danger. They're realizing they need to figure out how to switch to new kinds of encryption that quantum computers can't crack, something called quantum-resistant cryptography. But this is not a simple fix. It's a really messy, complicated process to redo the whole system without everything falling apart in the meantime. It would be like trying to change the locks on every door in a city while people are still coming and going out of all those doors. So for those watching the signs of the times, Q-Day could be one of those moments where technology takes a leap that changes how the world works, maybe even paving the way for some of those big shifts the Bible hints at in the last days. But there might be something even more terrifying coming soon in light of all this. Let's talk about quantum consciousness. Now, we've heard of artificial intelligence. We're going to get into artificial consciousness, which is sometimes called quantum consciousness, artificial consciousness. So most physicists admit that while they know much about the quantum world pertaining to our day-to-day lives, consciousness has eluded them. Science has unraveled the mysteries surrounding the subatomic existence that makes up physicality in our tiny section of the universe. That is, however, except for the mystery of self-awareness. Physics has yet to answer the question of consciousness from a quantum perspective. Now, there are physicists such as Sean Carroll who will admit that when it comes to the world around us and on a quantum level, they pretty much know what comprises existence by way of what's called the Standard Model. You could sort of think of it as like a periodic table for particles. You could sort of think of it like that. Now, of course, this does not apply for unexplained things in our universe, such as dark matter, dark energy, black holes, and some of the other anomalous things found in nature, but this leaves the question of consciousness open to various hypotheses. So, consciousness, again, the state of being self-aware, is something physicists have not come into agreement on concerning an explanatory theory, but that's not to say that there aren't theories out there. There's a lot of them. There have been theories presented that state consciousness is part of the electromagnetic field, such as semi-theory, CEMI. And this theory states that a disturbance in the surrounding electromagnetic field brought on by the firing of neurons in the brain is responsible for consciousness. Now, scientists have largely dismissed the idea of the electromagnetic field producing or having anything to do with consciousness. And the reason is, like, when you get an MRI, that's electromagnetic. It doesn't mess with your consciousness. But there is another theory that might provide a better answer, and this is called quantum brain dynamics, or QBD. And quantum brain dynamics, QBD, is a theory stating that there is a new quantum field responsible for consciousness. And this hypothetical field is known as the cortical field. The quanta, the particles, the elementary particles of this field are known as corticons. So it's just like, we have a gravity field. The particle of the gravity field is the graviton. We have an electromagnetic field. The particle of that field is the photon. Well, in this theory, there's a cortical field, and the particle of that field is corticon. Now, if that turns out to be true, it would mean our personal consciousness exists by way of an interaction with a quantum field or due to an interaction with quantum particles. And by the way, this says nothing about the soul or the spirit, and I believe that that's more where consciousness resides anyway, but this is just talking about physical processes of making, your brain and just everything work. So the theory suggests the possibility that the cortical field not only produces consciousness by means of interaction with neurons, but actually controls the neurons. Now, of course, this could lead to any number of follow-up questions. Is consciousness truly real if a field can control it to some extent? Could physicists learn to manipulate the cortical field, thereby manipulating consciousness as a whole? Could this pave the way for artificial intelligence and certain goals within the transhumanist movement? So due to the rules of quantum field theory, that's QFT, of quantum field theory, if the right amount of energy is applied to the cortical field, it would produce corticons. That's what CERN does. That's how the LHC at CERN works. They put enough energy into a field, and that field will produce a particle. So conceivably, this could be done at particle accelerators such as the LHC at CERN. So this leads one to wonder, if the cortical field is real, what types of applications could come from its discovery? Well, the possible applications from such a discovery as corticons is extremely far-reaching. The only true limit would be the imaginations of those who have control over the information. So it's quite obvious that unfolding the mysteries of consciousness would have enormous implications on society, culture, and the world in general. Again, think back to when quantum computers are mass-produced. These types of problems are going to be easier to solve. There are scientists today who are trying to tackle the mystery of consciousness, and given this could be tested with our current technology, it causes one to wonder what the future might look like if any of these quantum consciousness theories turns out to be true. If corticons are discovered, it would be proof of the cortical field, just like the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012 was proof of the Higgs field. Now, there are enormous technological implications to a discovery such as corticons. The solution to how to make artificial intelligence an actual reality without limits would be realized. This would also provide a relatively inexpensive way to do it with limitless resources. All one would need to know is how to manipulate the cortical field and or corticons themselves to keep them active inside a computer or other technological device. How much easier would it be to create a real consciousness out of thin air by manipulating nature rather than spending an unimaginable amount of money to research and develop a computer code and software that can handle an artificial intelligence? So if corticons are found, it would be far easier and more cost-effective to apply them to a machine or to build a machine that can manipulate the cortical field, thereby causing that machine to be conscious, aware, and even technically alive. And this could, potentially be done inside a quantum computer. So think about it. If scientists can create a self-aware artificial persona and place that into a computer, machine, or robot of some kind, who is to say that persona is actually artificial? Is it possible that demons can manipulate corticons? Excuse me. Is it possible that demons can manipulate corticons too, and in a sense hijack what scientists are trying to do and just pretend that it's artificial consciousness? In fact, take it one step further. Is it possible demons are influencing artificial intelligence right now? If so, scientists certainly wouldn't be able to know the difference because they're not looking for anything demonic. At least the vast, vast majority of them are not. But would we as Christians be able to know for sure? I don't know. But there is another horrifying possibility that came up in one of my interviews on the popular internet radio show at the time called the Hagman and Hagman Report. Early in the show, I was asked a question about the possibility of technologically implanting a new consciousness into a person. After I had explained quantum field theory and quantum brain dynamics, I stated, quote, "If the existence of the cortical field is true, it would have huge prophetic implications surrounding it. If they were able to discover corticons, they could change how you interact in the cortical field. They could change who you are. Effectively, it would kill your consciousness. It would probably kill you. They could replace your consciousness with another consciousness that they either create in a lab or is from somebody else. Talk about how easy it would be to have a one world government if they developed something like that. That's one of many potential outcomes that could come out of things they're doing at CERN. End quote. Now, of course, probably goes without saying that there is much more to that scenario that I presented to hosts Doug and Joe Hagman. And to get the full scope and context of the conversation, I don't know if it's available anywhere, but if you can find it, I highly suggest checking out the Coming Technocalypse MP3 audio series. I'm going to look around and see if I can find some more copies of that, because I don't believe that was something that was published through somebody else. I think I might have self-published that. I just need to remember where, because it's been years. I mean, this was a decade ago, too, I think. Yeah, this was around a decade ago. And it's crazy that a decade ago we were talking about this, and now it's becoming more possible for this kind of thing to happen. So as it stands today, there is no direct evidence that this type of technological consciousness replacement is going on now or will in the near future. However, it is still a possibility that surrounds a very mysterious feature of nature, which is consciousness. If science is ever able to crack what consciousness actually is in a physical sense, we might very well, have to face a future where outcomes such as what I described on the Hagman and Hagman report are realized. For now, all we can do is remain as informed as possible and prepare for the possibilities. Now, aside from what world governments might do with the potential discovery of corticons, there are other applications as well. There's a great potential within the transhumanist crowd if corticons are discovered. The discovery of corticons would be the answer to the question of how to technologically transfer a person's consciousness into a machine, thereby enabling that person to live virtually forever. And there's no real way to tell how far the effects of such a discovery would reach. What I presented here is only a few applications. If science discovers a way to explain, manipulate, and even create consciousness on a quantum level, surely our world and civilization will undergo a rapid and intense change that few will be ready to deal with or even understand. This is why we must start thinking about these things now so we can be prepared in the future. So to wrap up, back to the original claims of parallel realities, quantum computing, all that stuff. Quantum computing is a fascinating field with immense potential, but its implications for a multiverse theory are still in the realm of speculation. As believers, we can engage with these ideas, question them, and use them to deepen our understanding of God's creation without compromising our biblical worldview. We live in one universe under one God with one plan of salvation, not in an infinite sprawl of realities where every possibility exists. Could some form of the multiverse exist? Could God have created it that way? Yeah, maybe, but there really is no evidence for it. So, let's keep learning, questioning, and growing in both our faith and our understanding of the world, always remembering that the ultimate truth lies with God, not in the latest scientific claim. So, all that being said, let's see where we are on time. About 42 minutes. That's pretty good. Okay. So, that's all that I have for my presentation. So, I would like to know what you think. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you would like added? Anything you'd like removed? Or are there any parts that seemed too confusing? I know when it comes to this, it's almost impossible to break it down completely simply where anybody can understand, but I try to get as close as possible. And really, it's not even about, like, if some of this was confusing to you, it doesn't mean that you're not intelligent, and it doesn't mean that I'm smarter than you or anything like that. That's like one of the biggest things I want to get across through this whole thing. And maybe at the end of this presentation, when I'm actually presenting it, I'll make mention of this. It's not any of that. You can, if you're interested, if you care to, you can understand it. It's just about learning the language that scientists speak more than learning the concept. Like the concepts themselves, once we can kind of unlearn some of the things that we've learned, because we've been taught things wrong, like in school. Like when I was in school, they sort of taught us that like particles are just little tiny bits of matter, and they're not. They're actually fluctuations in quantum fields. But even just that, to a normal, just normal person, when they hear that, they're not going to understand really what that means. So it's really just about learning the language of these scientists, which I try to break down in my books. And again, all of this information comes from my new 2-book set, The Final Cataclysm, not available at the time of this recording, but will be soon. Yeah, it's just, it's that, and then be very, very guarded when you hear claims of things online, especially with stuff having to do with the multiverse or CERN or whatever. Um, I actually recently saw a post that was going around that made these just absolutely ridiculous, just totally science fiction claims about stuff happening at CERN. And there were a couple, and I'm not disparaging anybody, I'm not making fun of anybody at all, but there were a couple of online, like Christian personality, like preacher, pastor type people, that thought it was real and was sharing it around. And again, I'm not saying that to embarrass anybody. I understand it. Most people don't know this stuff, so it's easy. But we have to be really guarded, because there are people out there, and I've heard this before, that like got really into the Mandela effect a few years ago, and they really thought that there were time traveling demons changing our Bibles. And some people got to the point where they thought, oh, this universe isn't my home, this isn't where I'm from, and like they're acting like they're all in despair online and everything. And then there are others that even lost their faith, saying like, well, if the Bible can be changed, how do we know that the name of the Savior wasn't changed? It must have been changed. Maybe Jesus really isn't all this stuff. And it's the simplest answer for it. I used to host a show called Into the Multiverse, and with my wife Christina, and we did a 3-part episode on the Mandela effect and just broke it all down, and broke down how, for one thing, this type of like time travel and changing, and it can't work like that. It can't. You wouldn't have the memory of it, because the change would have happened before you were born, and even if it changed, like it can't work like that. And and there's a couple different versions of how time travel could work. I'm going off on a tangent now, but we broke it all down and just showed that it's like it just doesn't. But I do think that there's just some people that kind of want this stuff to be true, and they kind of want to feel like they have special knowledge that no one else has, and they kind of want that. They want to feel like they're set apart and they're special, and people don't really understand them. And I mean, think about high school. Like I grew up with middle school and high school. Like I grew up with a bunch of kids that were like that. But you see it all the time. So people get hooked into these little pet theories and things. These fads, really. And there's a bunch of them. They always pop up. And they end up sacrificing their faith over it. And to me, it's like, well, if it's that easy, because I mean, the Mandela effect thing, like the simplest answer is we're just remembering wrong. Like there are just some things that sound so close. Like one of them was, is it interview with a vampire or interview with the vampire? What does it matter? When you say it, interview with the vampire. Either way, you could make what I just said sound like you could make that either one, because it's with the or with a. There's a th there that goes. So there's all sorts of reasonable explanations on why we just might not be remembering some of this stuff right. And then people, I hear it still, even today, people will say, no, I know it. I know I remember it right. I know that I remember that this Bible verse said this, not what I see in my Bible right now. So it's like, okay, so you're believing what you know is a fallible brain. What you know is not a perfect brain. We don't have perfect brains. They mess up. They're not perfect. They're fallible. You're going to trust that over what you are directly reading in the Word of God. You're not going to trust God to preserve that for you. And if he's not going to preserve it, then he can't really hold you accountable for misunderstanding it, right? So I mean, you just throw all of Christianity away for this one theory, because now you don't have a fair God, because you have a God who's punishing you for things that you can't possibly know. it's just and then something is happening that you're not warned about at all, but somehow you're supposed to trust your own brain. You're supposed to trust what's in your own heart, even though the Bible itself says that the heart is deceitfully wicked. I mean, if one thing can be changed in the Bible like that, you got to throw the whole thing out. And why are you even a Christian? And again, there are still people today, but I think there's a sifting going on. Have you noticed? I'm going off on a big tangent. None of this is going to be in the presentation, because I would be over time at this point. But have you realized in the past 10, 15 years how many of these fads, how many of these like I don't even want to say conspiracy theory because it's like within our fringe Christian community, how many of these fads pop up and how many people go with the fad even if it conflicts with the Bible, and they're okay doing that. And most of the time they try to make it work, but I think there's a big sifting going on. And I think it's a time of testing. I think it's a time of where there's just, and we were warned about this in the Bible, there's going to be a lot of false prophets, a lot of false teachings. And I think we live in a time where false teaching is so accessible because of the internet, and it's exciting, and you learn about it from really charismatic personalities. The people that say this stuff online, by and large, are fun to watch. They seem interesting, they seem engaging, like you want to be their friend. And how many people will trade their faith in Christ for this little pet theory that, whatever it is. It's not only Mandela effect, there's others too. Like the whole idea that Paul was a false apostle, he's a false prophet, so you got to throw away all the writings of Paul. And it's insane. It's insane to me how many of these fads directly go to, you can't trust your Bible for what it says. You have to reinterpret it. You have to see it in a brand new way that was never taught before. It's all new. It's just insane to me. But I think that we're going through a sifting. I think that there's a bunch of false doctrines out there, and there's a sifting. It's who is going to hold strong to the faith, and who is going to be swept away by these little pet theories, these who's going to be swept away by demonic doctrines that are itching people's ears or whatever. And I think that's what's going on, and it does make it easier for us to see who we can trust, who the true believers are, who we can really trust. And I don't mean that everybody who has a pet theory is automatically like throw them out. A lot of it depends on their attitude, but a lot of it depends, really all of it, 100% of it depends on where they are with Jesus. If they're to the point where they're denying Jesus, or they're saying things in the Bible that well, it says this about Jesus, but you can't trust that because that's from Paul, and so we have to reinvent who Jesus is now. I mean, once you get into that point, I question why are you even calling yourself a Christian if not to just deceive people, if not to just trick people out of their own faith. So we have to be really, really vigilant with these wolves in sheep's clothing. There's a lot of them, and again, not everybody that has a theory like that. I wouldn't consider all of them wolves in sheep's clothing. It depends where their faith is in Jesus. Somebody could definitely believe in a multiverse and still believe in Jesus and have really strong faith. I would not consider that a salvation issue. I don't. With some of the things, it depends on how far you take it. Like if you're getting to the point where with Mandela effect that you're believing your own heart and your own brain over the Bible itself, and you're just unwilling to take instruction from the Bible, and you're going to go with what you think is right, then I don't see how you're a Christian. I'm not saying you're not saved or you are saved. That's up to God. But a Christian, a follower of Christ, you can't be if you're denying that the Christ in the Bible is actually Him. You're denying it, so you wouldn't be a Christian at that point. So we have to be really discerning about this kind of stuff. And that's why I do these videos, and I try to set the record straight as much as I can. I'm not always going to get it right either. I've been corrected on some things, and when that happens and I can verify it that it's a true correction, then I make note of it, and I'll say it in a video. And usually it's really small stuff. It hasn't been anything super huge, but even if it was, I have no problem if I'm wrong on something. I have no problem changing my mind on it. Actually, a big one that I have changed my mind on is the timing of the rapture. When I first started in ministry, I really didn't know, and I leaned towards uh, pre-wrath. I didn't really teach heavily on it because I just didn't know. But after years of study and praying and really making that a focus, for some reason it was just really important to me. And I didn't care which one was right, which rapture timing theory was right. I just wanted to know the truth because I didn't want to teach something that wasn't true. And it's a long, long story, but basically I came out the other end of it fully on board with the pre-trib rapture, and that was a few years ago that finally clicked for me. And when it did, I immediately went online and I started doing videos about it and saying, "Hey, anytime that I ever said anything about the pre-rap, I fully believe I was wrong. I now fully believe the pre-trib is right for X, Y, and Z reasons, and I've got plenty of video. I'm not going to rehash it all here. I've got plenty of videos on that. But again, I don't consider it a salvation issue. If somebody's pre-wrath, I'm totally fine with that. It just depends where they are with Jesus, or do they let the rapture idea? Do they let that be an excuse to go and attack other people, which I see a lot, and it drives me crazy. That more than anything, like when we start when others from other camps will start calling us cult leaders and comparing us to like cults and stuff. That's where it's like, okay, well, there's just no fellowship to be had here because now you're being a reviler, and the Bible tells me I have to stay away from people like that. So I do not interact with somebody who has that nasty of an attitude. But I still got plenty of friends that are, pre-wrath, post, mid, whatever, and they're respectful and nice about it. I've got partial preterist friends that think most of what happened, most of what I would consider future prophecy has already happened, and but if they're in Jesus, if they're saved, and they're not busting people down over this or using this as a weapon to club over people's heads, and they're actually respectful and loving about it, a Christ-like attitude, then I'm absolutely going to love that person. Even if we don't agree on certain things, so. That's the kind of stuff I think we really, really need to look out for and protect and guard ourselves against that kind of stuff, especially online, because it is really easy to get into online debates with people, and it is almost always fruitless. Every once in a while, if someone's open to it, every great once in a while, you can change somebody's mind in a like a Facebook comment, but it is so rare. And the only people that I've ever been able to help see my side, it's only the ones that their first inquiry is respectful. If they come at me saying that I don't know my Bible because I don't believe in flat Earth or something, I just flat out will not communicate with that person. I won't. It has nothing to do with their belief in flat Earth. It has to do with their attitude of them thinking that they know me and my relationship with Jesus just because we disagree on this non-salvational issue. That's somebody that's to me a reviler, and I'll pray for them. I pray that they'll grow up and become more spiritually mature and drop all that nonsense. Even if they continue believing in flat Earth, that's fine. Just have, and I definitely don't, but have the right attitude about it, be loving about it, and understand that is not the most important thing. That is not the guiding ruler of if you believe in the Bible or not. So, yeah, anyway, I kind of went off on a thing there. Like I said, none of this is going to make it into the final presentation. I'll probably do a shortened version of it at the very end to just say this is why I talk about this stuff, to correct some of the errors out there that unfortunately some people are believing in, and even some people are losing their faith in. But I would like to know what you think. Do you think that we're going through a sifting season right now? I think for at least the past 10 years, maybe more. It's hard for me to tell because I got into full-time ministry around, I think, maybe 12 years ago. So if it was going on before then, I would have missed it. I'm sure it was. It's probably been a thing that since the internet has been around, has always been here. But I think before the internet, it was harder for this stuff to really get traction because it would be like, one person with some out there theory in a church, and usually that whole church isn't gonna accept what one person says. But you go online and you can find communities where there's all these other one persons from these other churches, and you can all get together and then make a big movement out of something. So just be guarded for that. Just because you read it online doesn't mean it's true. Just because I say something doesn't make it true either. You know, it's always good to have the habit of checking on, being Bereans, checking the word, checking everything everybody says, and seeing if it lines up. All right, well, we have been going for an hour, so I will leave it there. I look forward to reading your comments. I would love to know what you think about all this. And just thank you so much for being available to, watch this video, help me out, and be part of the community. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. I keep forgetting to remind people to do that, but I guess that really, really helps YouTube videos get more exposure, which is what we want to do. We want to be a light in a world of darkness. So hit the like button, share it with everybody you know, and comment. All of that stuff helps YouTube share it with more people, so I would greatly appreciate it. And also, I'd just love to read your comments. So until next time, thank you so much. Love you all. Take care, and God bless. If you are a Bible-believing Christian who opposes the kingdom of darkness trying to run the world right now, then you are a renegade to the satanic system. We here at Daily Renegade wear that badge proudly. So if you're a renegade as well, head on over to dailyrenegade.com right now and get a membership today. You'll get our full catalog of Sharpening Report episodes and daily Renegade update videos on topics such as Bible prophecy, science, technology, the Nephilim, aliens, and so much more. All of our episodes at Daily Renegade are early access, so as a member, you'll get the videos before anyone else does. Daily Renegade also offers videos not available anywhere else due to social media censorship. We also have a community page only for members where we can all fellowship together without fear of censorship. It's basically the best of Facebook and YouTube rolled into one without any of the garbage. Memberships are only $10 a month or $100 a year, and if you can do it, I suggest getting the $100 a year because it's cheaper in the long run, and essentially you get 2 months for free that way. So come join our family of renegades at dailyrenegade.com right now. The link is in the description below, and we'll see you there.